Okay, today I'm going to review a selection in the 8P CSP Pseudocode computer programming language, which is not a real programming language. That's why we call it pseudocode. And so first I'm going to show you if statement. Okay. Okay, so in this example of an if statement, so the user will be asked to type in a number, an integer, and then we're going to the if statement, the condition in the if statement will check to see, so first thing will happen, it will mod num, the integer that the user entered, by 2. So if the result of num mod 2 is equal to 0, then that would mean that the integer is even. If num mod 2 is 1, then 1 would not be equal to 0, so then the integer must be odd. Okay, so then this condition would be false. So the only time this condition would be true if num mod 2, mod is modulus, the remainder. So for example, 4 mod 2 is 0. Is 0 equal to 0? Yes, 0 is equal to 0, so then the condition would be true. If the condition is true, then we would execute whatever code was between these two curly braces. Okay, so I'll run the code, and if I type 3 is an odd number, we know that. So then I hit enter, and it did nothing. So it doesn't display the message you entered an even number because 3 is not an even number. Okay, now I'm going to try an even number, 6. Okay, enter integer 6, and it displayed, because 6 mod 2 is equal to 0, 6 divided by 2 would be 3, and there would be no remainder. So when we do 6 mod 2, is there a remainder? No, there's no remainder. The remainder is 0. So is 0 equal to 0? True. So because the condition is true, we're going to display you entered an even number. So this is an example of an if statement. If condition is true, then execute this block of code or block of statements. Okay. Now we'll go back. Now we'll add the else. So now we have an else. If else. If condition is true, execute first block of code. If condition is false, then else, execute second block of code. Okay. So if num mod 2 is 0, the remainder is 0, then this condition would be true. 0 equals 0, and then we would display you entered an even number. If num is an odd number, then num mod 2 would be 1. We would have a remainder of 1. If the num is an odd integer, then an odd integer mod 2 would result in 1. So this would become 1. And is 1 equal to 0? Of course not. 1 is not equal to 0. So this condition would be false. So then we would go to the else, and then we would execute this block of code, the second block of code. Okay, so let's test that. So if I enter 7, 7 is an odd number. And so the result is it printed you entered an odd number. 7 is an odd number, correct. 7, I entered 7. 7 is an odd number. If I enter an even number, let's say 12, right? I entered 12. Okay, so 12 mod 2 would be 0. Is 0 equal to 0? True. 0 is equal to 0. So then we're going to display the first block of code. I'm sorry, we're going to execute the first block of code. You entered an even number, and that was the output. I entered 12, and 12 is an even number. Okay, thank you for your patience and your participation.